Time and reality are curious things, or rather, the perception of both is. Within physics, there are still doubts about what time is and what it represents. However, I intend to talk about it in the way that we animals, and especially humans, perceive it. What is time for us, anyway? This is an important question and very difficult to clarify. However, one thing is obvious. Our primordial perception occurs through the biological passage of the moments lived. We perceive time because we age, not only as individuals, but in the society around them. Other humans and even animals that are close to us grow old, and that's the most remarkable way in which we realize that time has passed. We also notice the degradation of objects, whether electronic or not, such as clothes, appliances, etc. Time acts on everything that surrounds us, making them old as well. We could say, then, that time is the act of aging, but not only that. Time is the passage from now to after, or a means by which we perceive the imminence of the present and what diverges between the now, what has already been, and what will yet be. We do not live in the past or in the future. The past serves us as a memory and the future as a dream. We live only in the present time, where time is not aging, but the set of acts and experiences to which the body is, at this very moment, being submitted. Therefore, even if we notice time in the aging of ourselves and of things, we do not experience the set of events of an entire life at the same moment, which would determine the idea of perceptible aging. Our experience exists only what is happening now. Within this, we notice the act of aging retrospectively in what we go through, but never at the moment in which it is occurring. We age at this very moment, but that is not what we perceive. In the present, what matters is the sum of what is happening around us in the set of physical and biological functions perceptible to our senses. It is in this way that time does not become an open and contradictory question only for physics, but also for us, animals, especially humans, in what we feel. This is because our own perception can be deceived, even if time is perceived, as said, in the set of physical and biological functions around us. This in itself does not determine a feasible and linear, deterministic and equal equation for all. That is, each one, in each situation, feels time in their own way. Do you want an example of this? Notice how the perception of time is slower or faster when you are following a sporting event and cheering for a certain team in that sporting event. As the match goes on, your perception that time is flying or time is dragging is shaped according to what the team is going through. And this has already been verified, including through research. You know when you have a very bad flu and it seems like everything lasts forever? Research has shown that this feeling is true, and yes, people with a flu tend to feel time in an extended way. Therefore, we cannot place time in a hermetic and logical definition only as something that is presented in the clock, deterministically pointing out its value as a simple and rigid numeral, but in what is felt between the possible interactions and as the perception of what happens, which can extend or shorten the sensation of passing this same numeral to different situations. In other words, the feeling of what happens in a minute of time is different for each moment perceived. In reality, in turn, is even more complex. In a simplified way, we can say that reality is everything that exists objectively, independent of human perception, including the set of facts, events, and phenomena that occur in the physical world and can be observed and proven. However, removing human perception into an idea of reality is questionable, both as a philosophical concept but as the very idea of experience itself. We have a very clear example of this in the phantom limb syndrome. Phantom limb syndrome is that sensation of pain or itching that some people with an amputated limb feel in their amputated limb in question. Even if it no longer exists objectively, one still continues to feel the sensations as if that limb were there. For medicine, there are explanations of the brain's behavior and complex interpretations of this situation. In practice, there is a perception of complex and non-literal reality about the objective plane. How can you say that the person who has the sensation of their amputated limb is not actually feeling something? In an even more thought-provoking approach, we even have the interpretation of duplicity of reality, proposed by some philosophers. This perception proposes that all life is perceived between two conflicting scenarios, being theirs, the imagined reality and the lived reality. Imagined reality is what we idealize about events, and lived reality is these events in themselves. Although both funnel into the same purpose, the imagined reality is always an idealized scenario, and that is why, in fact, the feelings of individuals are never in accordance with the event itself, because feelings live from the expectation of something, not in the lived reality, then arising in the imagined reality. It is in this conflict that our fears, frustrations, dreams, etc. arise, where each one lives with an experience of reality dissipated in this conflict. It is interesting how both concepts, time and reality, enter together into the field of perception. What generates experience turns out to be more important than a logical and hermetic idea of the concept itself. But it is important to remember a situation in which these two concepts meet: dreams. Everyone here has been through this. Try to imagine this situation as a generic example. You are in a scenario in your dream where many events take place that seem to last many hours, maybe many days. Suddenly, you wake up and notice that you have slept no more than an hour or two. You felt all those experiences. You lived that dream world as if it were your reality itself, as if it were possible to exist there, in fact, during all that time. What we feel in the dream can extend into an elongated perception of time and perceptual reality, much greater than a simple idea of the functional and biological duty of the body, as if we were only exercising the basic function of the brain by entering the REM state and mixing memories in the subconscious by creating an impossible scenario, so that art and science itself have already explored the idea of time extension and change of time and reality through this supposed life that we lead in dreams, this being a different life from the reality of when we are awake, but that, at that moment of existence of the dream, makes the individual have experiences consistent with where he is inserted. Notice how anyone feels many things in dreams as if they were real: fear, anguish, or love, comfort, security. All the things there are according to the experience that the person lives in that scenario. Thus, what happens in the dream, while it happens, is the experience of time and reality by which the individual can feel. This concept becomes interesting when we cross it with a question between 2 points. Is dream time really real? If nothing but the dream scenario proposed by the subconscious mind itself can determine that the events in the dream are false, it is very difficult to trace within the idea of the dream itself what is real and how its time works. Let's imagine the following example. If you, inside a dream, start running on a street and run without stopping, no matter how impossible an infinite street is in the real world, nothing leads you to believe that, at that moment in the dream, this is not possible. And you run endlessly on the street of this dream, although you would never do it in the real world. In theory, if our subconscious interpreted the real world and the dream world in the same way, you would never make absurd decisions while dreaming. However, what is believable while we dream belongs only to the dream, an experience of time and reality different from what we have in the real world. The biological conjunction of interpretations we accept from the brain while we sleep, and therefore dream, is different from when we are awake. Therefore, we also dilate the time there to be in accordance with what is needed when creating the scenario around a certain dream itself. If the dream scenario needs many days to occur, then the time perceived in the dream will lengthen for it to make sense to the dreamer of this scenario, even if in his real world only a few hours have passed. Within this perspective, it is very important to think theoretically about 2 conditions. The first is whether we can lengthen the perception of time indefinitely. The second is whether we can replicate our reality lived perfectly within a dream scenario. Basically, plagiarizing the most everyday experience of existence in a dream, but without it having a specific time to exist. That is, that the whole set of time of a real life can exist in a dream temporal perception, but that this experience is perfect and indistinguishable between the dream world and the real world. That the person can, in fact, live a whole life in a dream, but with an addendum, that in real life, this dream of complete life is consummated in a short time, no more than a few hours of real life for the individual. At the present time, we have some ways to consciously alter the perception of time without dreaming, such as meditation, psychoactive drugs, non-invasive brain stimulation. But none of these methods stretches time indefinitely, only proposes brief periods of elongated time. In the same way, we have some ways of altering the perception of reality for brief moments, also with psychoactive drugs or exercises such as lucid dreams, but nothing that can extend to a concept indistinguishable from reality itself. That the person can, in fact, live a whole life in a dream, but with an addendum, that in real life, this dream of complete life is consummated in a short time, no more than a few hours of real life for the individual. It is appropriate, however, to suggest a theoretical and possible exercise, because we must think beyond, in view of technological evolution and what we are capable of doing. Imagine the following scenario, already proposed in a similar way in some works of fiction. A person in a terminal state of some disease is placed in deep sleep, and in this deep sleep induced to dream of a scenario perfectly similar to his daily life when he was 10 years old. In this dream, the person lives his life from these 10 years, grows, matures, and ages again, all within the normality of a complete life, but with one detail. The time of this dream life, by some technological method, is extended in an indeterminate way, so that time passes there until the distinction between real time and dream time is no longer noticed. In this dream, then, the person will live all his days, weeks, months, or years as if they were normal. On the other hand, the person who in real life is in a terminal state and would not have more than a few days starts to live in this dream universe of extended time, having a new life in himself for as long as he can and as he wishes, annulling the true experience of time in the condition of reality outside the dream world. That is, while the person is with a short time to live in his real life, in this dream life he will have his whole life again, and as long as he wants to experience it. Sounds strange, doesn't it? But let's go a step further. Let us imagine that this person lived the whole time of his dream life from his 10 years of age until old age, and in this dream world he also encountered a terminal illness. Just as in real life, in this dream she was put into a technologically induced sleep and again awoke in a dream within the dream, where she went back to living as if she were 10 years old. Do you understand the cyclical system of the thing? In a way, there is no end to the act, thus allowing the person to live eternally in cycles, just like a rebirth, but in this case, not metaphorical or religious, but purely technological. Understanding, therefore, that time and reality are formed within perception, and that this perception can be altered, could we say that the experience of life is immortal? The question here is exactly this, since partially we have already managed to control the two necessary factors within this proposal, being time and reality. There is no way not to highlight in a more technological future that the experience of immortality through countless dream rebirths can become something possible. Or even more, maybe you are already in this future and living it, that your whole life and your experiences are just another layer of a dream universe of the same individual? Don't you feel that sometimes everything doesn't seem like a dream?